Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're taking a close look at something pretty fundamental in professional life, workplace feedback or conversations. We're drawing from a really insightful source that unpacks a detailed real-world scenario. It's quite good.
Yeah, it is. And our mission today really is to equip you with the practical language and the strategies behind it. How to confidently ask for feedback, and just as critically, how to respond constructively,
Yeah.
in a way that actually fuels your growth.
Right.
Think of this deep dive as maybe your shortcut to mastering a skill that can really accelerate your career.
Absolutely. And this source, it features a detailed role play. It's between Alex, who's just wrapped up a project, and Taylor, who provides the feedback. We'll follow their entire conversation step by step, pulling out every key insight, every useful phrase, and, the nuances too.
Right, exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. So, starting right at the beginning,
Got
proactive move. Alex actually goes up to Taylor and says, I just wrapped up the X proposal last week, and I'd really appreciate your feedback. Pretty direct.
It is, and what's absolutely crucial here is Alex's proactive stance. This isn't just like asking for info. It's a powerful signal. Professional maturity, commitment to growth. It subtly changes how Taylor sees Alex.
How so?
Well, not just someone who does tasks, but someone invested in their own development. And look at Taylor's response. Of course, Alex. Let's find a suitable time. It's immediate. It's positive.
Yeah.
It basically reinforces that asking like this. It's welcome. Encouraged, even.
That makes so much sense. It's like instead of just waiting passively,
Right.
Alex is basically saying, okay, I'm ready to learn. What did you think? But does the source mention any potential downside? Is there a risk of asking for too much feedback? Maybe too often.
That's a really good point.
Overwhelming the person giving it. How do you strike that balance? Proactive, but not overbearing.
Well, that's a great question. And this source, it focuses mostly on the act of asking itself. But the implication, I think, is always about quality over quantity.
Yeah.
The key isn't, bombarding people constantly. It's about strategic requests.
Yeah.
Especially after big projects or key moments. It's about showing intent without creating unnecessary work for others.
Got it. So that proactive first step, it lays some really powerful groundwork.
Definitely.
But what happens once you're actually in the conversation? Let's zoom into the meeting itself. Taylor actually kicks things off by asking Alex, how are you feeling after completing the proposal?
Which is a brilliant opening, actually.
Why? Why start with feelings? Seems a bit indirect.
Well, it raises that important question, right? But Alex's response tells you why. Alex says, a bit relieved, but curious about what I did well and where I can improve.
Okay.
That immediately shows a growth mindset. Openness. What's truly fascinating here is how setting that tone, open, curious, makes the whole session way more productive right from the start. It stops being about defense or justification. It becomes about development.
That makes perfect sense for, psychological safety. But what if the person doesn't show that growth mindset straight away? What if they seem, I don't know, a bit closed off or even defensive? How can the person giving feedback sort of nudge them towards openness?
That's where the giver's demeanor is absolutely key.
Right.
Staying calm, non-judgmental, reiterating that the feedback is for their growth, not a critique of them as a person. Sometimes just acknowledging the feeling helps. Like, I hear you, it's natural to feel that way. That can sometimes open the door a crack.
Okay, that makes sense. Acknowledging it. Right, so let's explore Taylor's initial feedback. It wisely kicks off with Alex's strengths.
Exactly. And Taylor doesn't just give vague praise like, good job. She details specific wins. She says, first, your organization was excellent.
Okay.
The proposals had a clear structure, headings, made it easy to follow.
Okay.
And you effectively summarized the key points in the executive summary. Very specific.
And it wasn't just the writing, right? Taylor also mentioned the visuals.
Yep, positives on visuals, too.
Yeah.
Your graphics enhanced the data. I liked how you highlighted key metrics visually.
Nice.
And leading with strengths like this, it's just so important for motivation, for receptiveness.
Right.
It builds confidence and makes sure the person feels valued before you get into the areas for growth. Our source gives some great language tips for this. Things like, you did a great job with, or I liked how, and your strengths include. And these aren't just, polite throwaway phrases. They're specific structures.
Oh, so?
Well, you did a great job. Attribute success directly to the person's action. I liked how X resulted in Y, shows the tangible impact. It makes the feedback actionable, personal, not just like generic encouragement.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting for me. That idea of positive feedback as a kind of blueprint.
Blueprint, yeah.
Like, imagine getting feedback that isn't just good job, but your ability to synthesize complex data into that visual story, it made our pitch irresistible. That's not just a compliment. It's like a repeatable strategy. I remember once getting feedback. It was so vague. I just nodded, walked away, no clue what to actually do differently. Specificity is gold.
It absolutely is. It tells you what to keep doing and how you might replicate that success elsewhere.
Okay, that's truly insightful, using specificity to create that repeatable blueprint. Love that. But of course, feedback isn't always sunshine and roses. How does Taylor then pivot? How do you move to the areas for growth without losing all that positive momentum?
Right. This is where the source really emphasizes maintaining that constructive, supportive tone, even when discussing the improvements needed. So Taylor outlines specific points. For wordiness, it was something like, some sections were a bit wordy,
Okay.
especially the methodology. You could use simpler language, direct but polite.
And for the timeline?
Yeah, for detail, the timeline slide lacked detail, maybe include more granular milestones.
Gotcha.
And then a credibility. It would help to add client examples or case studies to reinforce credibility. Still specific.
And Alex's response here is, well, it's kind of a model for all of us, isn't it?
It really is.
Just thanks, that's helpful. I see what you mean about wordiness. I'll revise. So direct, so open.
Totally. And the language tips from the source for this part, for constructive feedback, they're invaluable. Things like, it could help to, you might consider, one area to work on, and I suggest.
Ah, so it's suggestion-based.
Exactly. Notice that crucial shift.
Yeah.
From direct statements like, this is wrong, to invitations. It could help, you might consider. This gentle framing, it kind of activates the recipient's agency, makes them feel like a collaborator in their own development.
Right, not just being told what to do.
Precisely. It's like planting a seed, not dropping a hammer.
Planting a seed, I like that analogy. But I wonder, what if Alex had pushed back? What if they got defensive right there? Does the source offer ways to navigate that resistance, even if you use gentle phrasing?
Well, the source implies, I think, that the whole setup, the proactive ask, leading with strengths, the invitational language, it's all designed to minimize that resistance in the first place.
Okay, preventative.
Yeah, but if it still happens, the next step would likely be to, restate the positive intent, maybe ask more open-ended questions like, what are your thoughts on that? Or how do you see that playing out? Basically, invite dialogue instead of letting it become an argument.
That makes sense. Keep it open. Which actually brings us right into Alex's next key move, seeking clarity. Alex doesn't just nod and agree vaguely. They ask for more detail.
Right.
Alex asks, if I may ask, Kidder, would you clarify which section felt wordy?
Good question.
And then follows up with, and on timelines, what detail level would be best?
And Taylor gives really clear answers. Sure, the methodology segment, maybe break it into subheadings and shorten sentences by, say, 20–30%, very concrete. And for timelines, list weekly or biweekly milestones. That gives more transparency. This interaction just shows perfectly how asking clarifying questions stops assumptions dead in their tracks.
Yeah.
And makes sure everyone's on the same page about what the feedback actually means.
Yeah.
The source's language patterns for asking questions are spot on here. Would you mind explaining could you give an example of, what do you suggest for?
I've often struggled with this part myself, knowing what questions to ask to get real clarity. The idea of Alex going back and saying, okay, which section felt wordy? That's simple, but honestly pretty powerful.
It really is.
Because it empowers you, the receiver, to really grasp it and then act on it. It's about taking ownership, isn't it?
Precisely. It turns what could be a vague observation into a clear, actionable task.
Okay, so we've got the feedback, we've clarified it. Now, the critical next stage, turning it into concrete action steps. This is where, the rubber meets the road.
Definitely. And this stage really shows that collaborative approach we talked about. Taylor suggests, let's work together. Could you draft the revised timeline by tomorrow? It's a request, but it implies partnership.
Right. And Alex's response, it shows immediate, clear commitment. Absolutely. I'll update the timeline, streamline the methodology, and add one client example, then send it to you for a final review. Very clear plan.
It is. And then Taylor offers another valuable suggestion, kind of extending that collaborative spirit.
Yeah.
Also, I recommend a short practice presentation before sending to the client, maybe to the internal team.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, practical.
And the comms tips from the source for this collaborative planning, they reinforce this. Things like, I propose, let's schedule, how about we?
So again, invitational language.
Exactly. These aren't just polite suggestions. They're explicit invitations to co-create the solution, to share the responsibility.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, like you said, it really shows that feedback isn't just like a one-off critique. It's actually the start of a collaborative improvement process. Spot on.
It's so easy to just deliver the feedback and then, walk away. But this shows that ongoing partnership.
Indeed. It transforms feedback from just an event into, well, an ongoing journey of development.
Okay, finally, let's look at how Alex closes the loop. Responding positively, planning the follow-up, this is where that professionalism really comes through.
Absolutely. Alex's closing is appreciative, concise, professional. Thanks for your guidance, Taylor. I appreciate your insights, and I'll implement these changes.
Nice.
And then, crucially, Alex takes the initiative for follow-up. Doesn't wait to be asked. Asks, would it be okay if I follow up with you midweek to check progress?
Proactive again.
Exactly. And Taylor's welcoming response just seals it. Of course. I'm happy to help.
Our source actually provides some great suggested closing lines for you listening to maybe internalize and use. Things like, thanks again for your feedback. Simple, I'll keep you posted, shows action. And I appreciate your support, acknowledges the help. And just doing that, acknowledging the feedback, proactively planning the next steps, it really builds trust. It shows professionalism. It closes the loop effectively and signals, look, I'm committed to actually acting on what we discussed.
So what does this all really mean for you, the listener, this whole deep dive? It's offered, I think, a pretty powerful toolkit for your own conversations, whether you're the one giving the feedback or the one receiving it.
Definitely. And just to kind of synthesize the key phrases from our source's reflection, maybe reinforce them for you. For asking for feedback, remember something like, I'd appreciate your feedback on. Direct but polite.
Right.
For giving strengths, you did a great job with. Focus on specific, actionable praise. When giving constructive feedback, it might be helpful too. Frame it as an invitation, not an order.
Yeah.
For asking clarification, could you explain? Simple, direct, avoids those dangerous assumptions.
Okay.
And for planning next steps, let's schedule. Make it clear, collaborative, action-oriented.
And practicing these phrases, it isn't just about, sounding professional on the surface. It's really about internalizing the mindset behind them, isn't it?
The more you use them, the more naturally you'll approach these conversations.
Turning something that, let's be honest, can often feel a bit daunting into a real opportunity for growth. So we've walked through this complete feedback loop, haven't we? From proactively asking all the way to collaboratively planning and implementing changes. And we've armed you with specific language patterns along the way. This really isn't just about communication skills, is it? It feels bigger. It's about accelerated growth for you, for your team.
Absolutely. And mastering workplace feedback, it isn't just about what you say or hear in one single meeting. It's about consistently fostering a culture, a culture where growth is seen as a shared journey.
A short journey. I like that.
So maybe a final thought for you to mull over. How might proactively seeking and thoughtfully acting on feedback transform things? Not just your own individual performance, but maybe the dynamics, the energy, the effectiveness of your entire team. Keep practicing, stay curious about it, and we'll see you next time.